Ben Carson made an absolute fool of himself yet again, discussing separation of powers and checks and balances and how that pertains to gay marriage. Let's watch.
The Supreme Court just heard a case on same-sex marriage. As President of the United States, what are you prepared to do to preserve traditional marriage?
Well, first of all, we have to understand how the Constitution works. The President is required to, carry out the laws of the land. The laws of the land come from the legislative branch. So if the legislative branch creates a law or changes the law, the executive branch has the responsibility to carry it out. Doesn't say that they have the responsibility to carry out a judicial law. And that's something that we need to talk about.
No, Ben. No, it's not. Because you have no idea what you're talking about. That's embarrassing. This guy is a neurosurgeon. How are you a neurosurgeon? You were able somehow to pick up all the complexities and the nuance and how to do brain surgery and how to be so precise and so specific in how you go about your job. You could do that, but when it comes to politics, when it comes to government, all of a sudden you're like, you make no sense. You don't know what you're saying. What you said doesn't make any sense. He's like, we should look at the Constitution, which I didn't do. And here's the way it works. So the executive branch has to carry out what the legislative branch says, but if the judicial branch says something, you don't have to listen to it. Okay, no. In Marbury versus Madison, Supreme Court case, they establish what's called judicial review. Now, judicial review does not mean that the Supreme Court essentially gets to make law and pass law. No. But what judicial review means is the Supreme Court gets to check whether or not a certain law or policy is constitutional. So they're interpreting the Constitution to determine whether or not a current state of affairs is within the guidelines of the Constitution. So if the Supreme Court says, hey, that thing that you do where, you're torturing people in Guantanamo Bay, hey, that's unconstitutional according to the 8th Amendment. You can't do that. You need to stop it immediately. Ben Carson saying the executive branch can go, we disagree. We're going to override that because we say so. Okay, no, that would be tyranny. That would be fascism. That would be a dictatorship. When you have a unitary executive who goes, I don't care about the checks and balances on me. I'm going to override that because I disagree. Continue torturing. No. The judicial branch's job, the Supreme Court's job, is to say whether or not any given law is constitutional or not. So when they're looking into the constitutionality of gay marriage, they're not trying to make a new law on gay marriage. They're interpreting the Constitution to say whether or not it is just to stop gay people from getting married all around the country. And whatever they decide, yes, you have to listen to what they decide. They're checking the constitutionality of it. So up until this point, your team has won, essentially, Ben Carson. Where up until this point, the idea is, okay, you can't stop states if they want to have gay marriage in the given states, but the federal government doesn't need to have gay marriage at a federal level, so it doesn't have to be in every state. You let the states decide one by one. Well, now the issue in front of the court is essentially, does the Equal Protection Clause make it so that you have to treat gay people equally when it comes to marital law, and you have to make it so they have the same Social Security rights and inheritance rights and tax rights and things of that nature. And, the idea is, can you reasonably interpret the Constitution to say this doesn't just apply to black people, which is what it was originally for, but it also applies to gay people because it's fundamentally unequal to not treat them the same under the law when it comes to their marital status. So that's the decision they're faced with. And look, all the leaks so far are pretty clear that it's going to fall on the side. They're going to fall on the side of gay people and gay rights activists, and we're going to have gay marriage at a federal level, and they're going to come to that conclusion based on the Constitution, a reasonable interpretation of the Constitution. But what Ben Carson wants to say is, I disagree, therefore I'm going to disregard that. And he says that behind the bullshit excuse of, well, the president needs to listen to the legislative branch, which, by the way, that's also not necessarily true because he could veto it, right? Something from the legislative branch. But he doesn't have to listen to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court doesn't make judicial law. Yeah, they don't make judicial law, but they interpret the Constitution. And the Constitution overrides federal law and overrides state law. So you need to check your facts, and you need to get your understanding of the American system of government right before you actually try to run it.